it wants to rev really high up in the RPM range right when it's turned on. It shoots right up to around 4,500 RPM and kind of hovers right there. And we're not sure what the problem is really. We started reading in the service manual about what makes this car idle, right? And there's two idle valves on it, and both of them have coolant lines running to them, and the temperature of the coolant judges how much the idle valves open. So we didn't have any water in the car, so we went ahead and filled the entire radiator up with water, and the problem still persisted. So after bleeding the coolant lines for the idle valves multiple times, I'm going to pull the cap off of this valve. This is the fast idle valve, and try and thread it all the way closed and see if that helps. And if not, I'm going to pull both valves off. Down here is the electronic idle control valve, and try and block them off and see if that will make the car idle right. Here's the fast idle valve off of the engine. I'm going to use this flat bar I have right here. This is the same piece that I used to make the bracket for the alternator. It's 1/8 by 1.5 inches. I'm going to make a plate that just covers up those two holes right there. I'm just using a Harbor Freight flux wire welder with some Lincoln Electric wire. I'm going to grind it smooth now and then start drilling the holes next. Part's finished. Now I need to go find some O-rings. These were extras from the injector O-ring kits that we bought, and they just happen to fit. Alright, here's what the final version of the block-off plate looks like. I trimmed it quite a bit to be able to clear the vacuum lines and the funny shape of the manifold. I'm going to get it installed right now. Since removing the fast idle valve didn't fix our problem, I'm going to remove the electronic idle control valve below the throttle body right here and see if that helps. This is just going to be a repeat of what I did on the fast idle valve. I had to gouge out the holes a little bit to get them to fit over these bolts. I don't have a drill bit big enough, but I went and found these bolts I'm going to use, and they have real large washers on them, so the holes don't have to be perfect anyways. There's how it fits on there. It covers the two vacuum holes there. I'm going to paint it and then go install it. Alright, I just did the same thing as last time. I greased some O-rings and stuck them to the manifold. Alright, right now I just hooked up the fast idle valve and the electronic idle control valve back up to the cooling system, and added some more water. Here they are right here, just shoved underneath the manifold. And I plugged both the sensors back in, just to make sure the ECU's reading everything correctly. We just pushed the car over into the driveway and got it on jack stands. We're going to start working on the exhaust today. We got kind of tired of troubleshooting the engine, and we just want to move on to something else for right now. I pulled the exhaust manifold off the car, and it's a typical eBay quality. The gasket wasn't sealing right. I don't think the flange is flat 100%, but it's leaking pretty bad. But I was going to go ahead and install the correct gasket. You can tell the ports on this one are a lot smaller than the ports on that one, because this is just for the regular single overhead cam D series. Manifold is what it is, but the bolt pattern is the same for the double overhead cam D series, but the ports don't line up exactly. Most people modify the holes in the manifold to make the ports sit exactly right, but these ones are drilled large enough that if you just pull up on the manifold when you bolt it in, they'll line up correctly. So I'm just going to put it back in and then start getting the exhaust fabricated. Here's the pieces we're going to be using to build the exhaust. We got one U-bend, one piece of straight section 7 feet long, flex pipe, and the Magnaflow muffler. All of this is 2-inch diameter. We're going to be making this a one-piece exhaust and just weld the flex pipe right to the header, and then use the piece of straight to go back a little ways to the muffler, and then use the U-bend to go out the side of the car right in front of the passenger rear tire. The first thing we're going to do is cut off this flange right here because it's slightly contacting this shift rod. Alright, we cut the flange off and we still had a little bit too much angle towards that shift rod there. So we're going to cut a little pie-shaped piece to weld on there so the exhaust will be pointing straight back towards the rear of the car. We've got the flex section mocked up in place right here. I'm going to go ahead and tack it in and then finish welding it. I got the exhaust installed. I'm trying to mock up where the muffler is going to be over here. Got it up on a jack. Now I'm about to cut a piece of pipe to go in between those two pieces right there. I've got the exhaust hanging back in the car now, and it's time to make some hangers for it. Cut this hanger off the old exhaust, and I'm going to try and reuse it. I can't get the exhaust off. The way this points down like this, I cannot remove that rubber hanger. So I'm going to cut this little piece off here and try and slide it straight out. That way I can still use this hanger, but just it won't have the curl down on it. Alright, so I've got the U-bend positioned in there kind of where we need it. It's going to run straight down the tunnel and then curve with the regular exhaust tunnel. I'm just going to bring it straight out of the car right here. Alright, I've cut that U-bend in half. It fits the exhaust tunnel perfectly, so I'm going to get it tacked in. Alright, here's the full exhaust system. I just got done welding it. Now I just need to hang it back in the car. Alright, here's what the exhaust looks like underneath the car. I hammered out the pinch weld right here so the exhaust would have plenty of room to move around a little bit. Here's what the exhaust ended up looking like. It's sticking out a little bit further than intended. We might trim it off in the future, but probably just going to leave it like this. Now that the exhaust is finished, we're going to move on to the brake system. We have some APDI Type 200 DOT4 brake fluid that we're going to bleed the master cylinder with before we put it on the car. Now that the master cylinder is on the car, we're going to bleed all the brake calipers. Alright, the next thing we're going to do is fill the transmission. I've got the 10W40 motor oil, the same kind we use in the engine. It has a transfer pump on it. And we're going to start pumping it into the transmission. Our transmission is full now. It just started dripping out. I'm going to put a drain plug back in it and then take it for a test drive. During our test drive, the radiator sprung a leak and it was spraying water all over the windshield. So next, we're going to fix that. But also, later in the day, I cranked it to move the car and the idle was doing something really weird. So we still need to work on the idle problem. Alright, here's the remanufactured radiator. I've got all the fans and stuff pulled off of the old radiator. I'm going to start installing them now. Turns out the vacuum leak was caused by the gasket in between the manifold and the head. We buy most of our parts from Rock Auto, and a lot of times it's when they have a wholesaler closeout sale. I don't think the brand of gasket we used is bad, I just think the one we received had been sitting on a shelf for too long and it dried out. I went and bought some silicone gasket maker, and I'm just going to make new gaskets for the intake side and the exhaust side. Alright, I got everything put back together, and it's been 24 hours now, so the gasket should be dry. One thing I do want to mention, I took off my block-off plates from the intake manifold and put back the electronic idle control valve and the fast idle valve, and they're both plugged in. And I'm going to try it that way first and see if the idle comes back down to normal. But also, since we lost coolant pulling the intake manifold off, I think it might do the same thing, because there's going to be no water running through the hoses that are connected to the idle valves. As we sit here, the idle is coming down as little bubbles flow up in the coolant tank. So yeah, I guess the idle is fixed now. Next, we're going to replace the last two cam caps with ones from the old engine so that they fit the distributor and the cam angle sensor correctly. Also, we're going to replace the valve cover seal and throw on the brown top cover. That's it for this episode. Thanks for watching.